This is the Weekend Readout.
The Weekend Readout.
This is the Week in Readout.
This is the Weekend Readout.
This is the Weekend Readout.
This is the Weekend Readout. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, I'm Drexel and welcome to the Weekend Readout, the show that recaps some of the important stories in politics from the week that you should have been paying attention to. Now, other than the new Star Wars trailer, so much happened in politics, so let's read it out. The donkey in the room. Thursday, former Secretary of State and current Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton testified in front of the 7th panel and the 21st hearing investigating Benghazi. Now, I say investigative very loosely because obviously this investigation has become more about Hillary Clinton's emails than it did about what happened to the 4 Americans on September 11th, 2012. Now, during the hearing, Trey Gowdy, congressman from South Carolina, opened the hearing with a 20-minute tirade about how serious his committee's investigation was. I suspect he felt he needed to after all the comments flying around from various members of his own party and a former staffer from the committee on the purpose of the committee, basically politicizing it. Secretary Clinton opened her testimony calm, poised, and ready to answer the committee's questions, not about emails, but about what happened on the night of the attack and how the government can improve the security of foreign embassies. Now, the committee spent a lot of time judging the findings of the ARB, or the Accountability Review Board, and then used the findings of the current and past reports from that review board against Secretary Clinton. Now, keep in mind, all the congressmen on the committee are running for re-election. Take Peter Rossman, for example, the congressman from Illinois. He's a heavy blue state, I might add. He spent parts of his testimony berating Hillary Clinton for looking down at notes during his line of questioning, to which Clinton shot back, "I can do more than one thing at a time." Susan Brooks, the congresswoman from Indiana, used a little bit of political theater by adding props to her line of questioning by bringing out stacks of Hillary Clinton's emails, trying to make the case as to why one stack of emails was smaller than the other stack. But the only thing that she learned was that Hillary Clinton could conduct business without email. Now, thank goodness for the Democrats like Tammy Duckworth, Adam Smith, and Adam Schiff from California for attempting to bring back the focus of the committee of what the committee should have been focused on in the first place. According to Benghazi.house.gov, they should have been looking for accountability for policies and decisions related to the security of facilities in Benghazi and the response to the attacks, including individuals and entities responsible for those policies and decisions, executive branch authorities' efforts to identify and bring to justice the perpetrators of the attacks on the facilities in Benghazi, executive branch activities and efforts to comply with congressional inquiries into the attacks on the United States facilities in Benghazi. Now, a lot of the committee's focus was not on any of that or any of the key members of the Obama administration who had a direct effect on security and overall strategy, but on people like Jake Sullivan, the Deputy Chief of Staff, Cheryl Mills, Secretary Clinton's Chief of Staff, and Huma Abedin, who we know as Anthony Weiner's wife, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff, and the infamous Sidney Blumenthal, who wasn't even an employee at the State Department or employed by the Obama administration, but a close friend to Clinton and an advisor at the Clinton Foundation. Now, as the 11 hours dragged on, the hearing became more and more political, and the Republicans could not decide how much they wanted to actually pin on Hillary Clinton. Maybe Trey Gowdy could use some of his words and use a little Morse code or carrier pigeons to find out exactly what they're looking for. Also this week, former vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan announced that he would step up and become the next Speaker of the House. Now, as you might remember, Speaker John Boehner announced that he would be stepping down effective October 30th. Now, it was widely speculated that Kevin McCarthy of California would take his place, but after his comments about the truth concerning the purpose of the Benghazi committee, Republicans realized he might not be the right person to carry their message. Now, before agreeing to step into his new role, or his upcoming new role, Paul Ryan had a few demands for his fellow House members. This included a near unified vote on his candidacy and a change to the parliamentary motion to vacate, which has only been used twice in history and was almost used on John Boehner not too long ago. This would ensure that Paul Ryan could control the 40-member Freedom Caucus, which has caused quite a headache for the party over the past few years. Now, it must have been a tough decision for Paul Ryan because he had to give up one of the most powerful positions that a House member can have, the chairmanship of the House Ways and Means Committee, which has tax and revenue oversight on how our government spends our money. Now, I think that Paul Ryan is a smart guy, and he'll be able to possibly unify his party through this next election. I always thought that he would make a good vice president just alongside the right candidate. The official House vote is set for next week, October 28th. And finally, in the readout, with the full support of the president and the backdrop of the White House, Vice President Joe Biden announced that he would not be seeking the Democratic nomination for president, leaving the door wide open for Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, or even Lincoln Chafee. Speaking from the Rose Garden, Vice President Biden told us that the grieving process doesn't respect or much care about things like filing deadlines or debates and primaries and caucuses, and that the Biden family is in a place that when you think of your loved one, it should bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eyes. Now, I know a thing or two about that, and that was the driving factor in his decision not to run. He did, however, send a message to Democrats around the country telling them that they should not only defend the president's record, but protect it and run it, something that they didn't do in the 2014 midterm elections.
We've got a lot of work to get done over the next 15 months, and there's a lot of there's a lot that the president will have to get done. But let me be clear that we'll be building on a really solid foundation. But it all starts with giving the middle class a fighting chance.
The vice president laid out what he thinks the Democrats should be focused on this election, letting us know what he probably would have been running on: working families, child care, and expansion of cancer research and justice reform. Hopefully the Democrats' leading contenders will take note and refocus their efforts on all the issues that matter. Now, one of the new segments as we get knee-deep into this election is what I'm going to call the Quorum Call, where I'll call on you to come on the show and we'll talk about a wide range of topics. This week, I'm joined by three millennials from around the nation to have a little chat about what's happening in Washington and around the country. I'm joined by Jocelyn Polite from Los Angeles, former Army Captain Ryan McAllister from Washington, D.C., and former Obama 2012 campaign staffer Michael Deininger-Bell. Thanks for coming on, you guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Lots happened this week, so we're just going to dive right into a couple of things that happened. Let's go back. Let's start with the the first Democratic National debate that happened on CNN last week. What were your guys' thoughts on the debate as a whole? Let's just talk about the debate as a whole, and then maybe we can get to some of the specifics of the candidates.
I would say first, it was really interesting to see a stage that didn't have like 18 to 20 people on it. So that was different from the ones that we've seen before. But initially, I really felt like Bernie Sanders came out swinging. I felt like he was there to give a lecture and educate everybody on what democratic socialism was, and I felt like he was effective in getting that point across. So later, I learned that everyone polled and thought that Hillary won, but I know that night that I was watching, I definitely felt like Bernie Sanders came out strong.
I thought it was a good, refreshing viewpoint to see some substantive issues actually being talked about in comparison to the Republican debates. I think there was a lot less name calling and a lot more civility between the candidates themselves, and really focusing on the issues and the things that should be mattering to the rest of the electorate.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It was really nice. It was not a lot of bullying and not a lot of name calling. It's all the candidates had in common, to be honest. But it was really refreshing compared to our Republican.
One of the things that Jocelyn just brought up that I thought was really interesting over the past week, our generation seems to be really obsessed with Bernie Sanders right now, which is a good thing for Bernie Sanders. But one of the things that I noticed was that everybody was so focused on the next day poll that came out. Do you guys think that the online polls are as accurate about what's happening around the country as those Bernie Sanders fans seem to be?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm one person where I've never been polled in my life that I remember. So when I start hearing about there's this poll and there's that poll, I'm like, well, where's the poll that I've ever gotten? So it makes me a little skeptical about the polls. But I think Bernie Sanders it's interesting, the dynamic with him, because when you really think about it, I know that we've been throwing around socialist and everything, and everyone's so scared because they're confusing socialism with communism and all of this kind of stuff is going on. But Bernie Sanders really is an old school Democrat, like the back in the day, 40s, 50s, 60s type of Democrat. And so when you hear the issues that he wants, it's a hodgepodge between socialism and capitalism. So I just think that that's pretty confusing to everybody. And I think he was trying to clear that up. Don't know if he missed the point on that. I know he's going to talk a little bit more about it and try to get a little more clarity on that, because he knows that people are confused.
The one thing that differentiates Bernie Sanders from the other candidates is when he speaks, you can tell that he has real passion and that he's being completely genuine. I think with other candidates, they come off as somewhat wooden and fake, especially with Martin O'Malley in the last debate. And even with Hillary, it seems that she evolves on issues, as she says, when she gets more information, but it really seems like it might be for political expediency. So I think with Sanders, he's been taking these stances for so long. You can look at videos from the 80s and the 90s, and he has the same constant stance. It's just we can feel that enthusiasm and that real dedication to all the stances he's taken over his political career. And I think that translates well to our generation, who really fed up with politics. I think everyone along the entire American public is basically feeling that way.
I think that what Bernie Sanders has to say is really wonderful, and I definitely think it's refreshing and people need to hear it. And also, I agree that it appeals to your audience that don't really know what's going on in the political, or don't know that, the ins and outs of the political spectrum, but they do know what they don't want, they do and don't want, But I think that Hillary Clinton by far is the better candidate when it comes to getting these things actually done. Like, sure, we're, as Democratic voters, we can agree on, or they can agree on certain things that we want to get across, but to actually get them done is, something that Hillary is.
Hillary Clinton has always been pretty hawkish, pretty close center right on a lot of issues. One of the things Michael brought up was something that I talk about a lot, which is the leadership factor of Bernie Sanders. Can Bernie Sanders, his ideas are great, but can Bernie Sanders lead in a way that reaches across the aisle? Do you guys think that somebody like a Bernie Sanders is going to be able to move that needle, or move those Republicans in the House, that they're going to keep the House? 99% of the chance they're going to keep the House after the 2016 election. Is he going to be able to work across the aisle? Because it does not seem to me, when President Obama ran in 2007, he ran on a campaign of, working across the aisle and bridging that gap. And if he can't do it, what makes you think that somebody to the left of him is going to be able to do that?
Well, Drexel, for me to weigh in, I would think that if anything, he's driving the Democratic candidates more left. I mean, it was obvious when Jibwa would speak the entire debate, he just seemed to be out of touch with what the base really wanted out of their candidate that they'd be recommending. So I think when it comes to his presence, I think he is a very polarizing figure. I think American politics in general right now is very polarized. And his presence at least will drive the base more left, and hopefully provide a candidate that can actually articulate our values, especially now that they're really in threat with the way the Freedom Caucus and the rest of the House Republicans are operating. Simultaneously, I think Hillary is more capable of seeing the other side and taking other positions, and is less stubborn in comparison to how, I guess, much of a staunch progressive Bernie Sanders is, and it seems like he won't budge on many issues. I think he has the same kind of qualities that we would think of Ted Cruz having for the Republican Party, except, of course, it's the progressive lens. So obviously, I would support those policies, and in a dream world, I think I would want him to be president. But I don't think it's realistic when it comes to who's the most electable person that could possibly translate to middle-class Americans, especially in some of the stances where I heard compare himself or compare the United States to, okay, if we have socialism implemented, he would compare it to like what Denmark has. You got to think that most Americans, especially I think in more rural counties or on the GOP side, won't want us to be more like Denmark or a different country in the Nordic countries. So while I can salute what he's saying, and I think I respect what he's saying, I don't think most Americans on the other side are going to support that, and they'll probably fight it just as hard as they did with Obama.
I think this is an important week, has been an important week for Hillary Clinton. Obviously, we've been talking about Benghazi for the past year and a half. How important to voters do you guys think this Benghazi panel is? and I'm not even talking about, I feel like the Benghazi panel should have been split into two. There should have been a select committee on Hillary Clinton's emails and a select committee on Benghazi, because I think people are confusing the two, and I think that's always been a part of the Republican plan, is to always confuse the American people and make them think something else is going on. Do you guys think this Benghazi panel will, and Michael, you can chime in, is this Benghazi panel going to hurt Hillary Clinton in the long run?
Oh, I definitely. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I agree. I mean, I definitely agree. I think that it will hurt her in the long run, just because it's something that, it's something negative. It's a big deal. I mean, her, some people see it as a negligence, and American lives are on the line. And then the same thing with the emails. They just, you can build up trust your whole life, and then you knock it down with one thing. It's the same, same situation with her. Bernie doesn't have these strikes against him, so. Yeah.
And I'm talking about in the general election too. That passed the Democratic nomination. Obviously, Democrats don't see this panel as a panel that means much of anything. So, to the general public, independents, up against a Republican candidate, that's where I want to know if it is going to hurt her if you guys think it's going to hurt her in the general election, because I think at the end of the day, the American people know what the focus has been on, and it's certainly not been on the 4 Americans that died on September 12th, or 11th in 2012. So, Jocelyn, you were saying something earlier.
Well, I mean, I definitely feel like it could be something that does hurt her. I mean, it's been so convoluted, and there's so many different things to it, and there are key points to it that have to be addressed. I mean, there's the emails, and should we have been there in the first place, to intervene in the situation, and who gave the call for them to pull back, and all of that kind of stuff, the death of the U.S. ambassador, everything, all of that is in question, and there's different levels to, I think, each of those issues, like of importance. Some score maybe a 5 out of 10, some score like a 2, but I think that Hillary, it can hurt her, because for the general public that don't know all about all of the emails and everything that went on, I think that the fact that we see things like, was there a cover-up? You know what I mean? And when we see, was there a cover-up, we automatically kind of.
But what was there? Here's my thing. What was there to cover up? We're talking about Americans that die every day. Whether or not we don't have select committees on deaths of soldiers every day. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like for an American ambassador and three folks from the State Department died in Libya. In Benghazi, like, who talks about that?
Well, I mean, yeah, and you can look at it like that just happened, but at the same time, there are some circumstances around that. There were, the whole, like, General Petraeus, all those emails, that was an issue. Hillary's emails are an issue.
Right, but what I'm saying is this whole Benghazi situation has, first of all, if we notice, it has not touched the Obama administration past Hillary Clinton.
And that's the problem.
So we're talking about the idea that this thing was covered up by the Obama administration in general, but yet it has not passed Hillary Clinton's State Department. So at some point, if this was any other person other than Hillary Clinton, this would have gone straight to the president. This would have been President Obama's mess. Yet somehow it's not. Somehow it has not gone this far.
Okay. So I think, Drexel, like, the thing that shows that it definitely is partisan is the fact that we focus so much entirely on the status of her emails and what she's doing with her own private email server. Okay, she didn't complain about it, and it kind of tarnishes her credibility or her trustworthiness with a lot of people. But simultaneously, they're not talking about the circumstances that led to the consulate being attacked. They're not really talking about the circumstances around the specific attack itself. They're mostly all just considering what's in her private emails and how can we actually get her specifically on that. So I think it's showing that it definitely is a partisan argument, that people are definitely not trying to make the State Department accountable for it. It's really just to tarnish Hillary Clinton's reputation. And I think Hillary's at her best when she's against the ropes and has a sparring partner. And I think this is not going to hurt her in the long run. I think if they would have found something, it already would have been discovered.
Michael, you were saying something? I think you were chiming in.
Oh, no, I mean, she's the one that's winning. She's the one in the lead.
Well, I just find it very interesting how far it has not gotten, and because if this was if this was 2010 Republicans taking over Congress, if this is 2014 midterm elections, they would have been pinning this whole thing on President Obama. Before we go, one question: who do you think is going to win the Democratic nomination?
I think Hillary's going to win the Democratic nomination. I think she's going to get it. I think she's the popular vote. I think she's the one that's going to get it.
Without a doubt, Hillary Clinton's going to win the nomination. I mean, I think she's the most qualified candidate. I think she stands and appeals to everyone pretty well, and I think there's no doubt that she'll be the next president of the United States.
I'd have to agree with everyone. Just that Hillary's going to be our candidate. Yeah, I think that everybody's just going to wake up, and I mean, I feel like if you're about to cast your ballot, there's really no question on who you want to run the country.
I will try to be as fair as possible for the next few months, and then we'll see how that goes come February, come Super Tuesday. Thank you guys so much. You can catch the full conversation in the Weekend Readout Quorum Call playlist on YouTube. I'll see you guys very soon. As always, there are other things happening around the country, so here's this week's Not to Mention. In the latest GOP primary saga, Ben Carson is leading Donald Trump in the polls in Iowa, much to Trump's confusion. President Obama is refocusing the administration's efforts on combating heroin and prescription drug abuse. Congress is about to once again go into battle over the debt limit, which hits its ceiling in a few days. And President Obama made his fifth veto of his entire presidency this week, sending back to Congress their massive $612 billion defense spending bill, much to the dismay of the Republicans. You can check out all the links to these stories in the comments below. Now, voter turnout has been at an all-time low over the past few elections. Democrats have a higher turnout in presidential elections, and Republicans have a higher voter turnout in the midterms. The one constituency that's the most apathetic is also the most crucial. The millennial generation, my generation. Why is that, though? It's not because we don't know where we stand on the issues. The excuse that I always hear is, well, government isn't going to work for me anyway, so why bother? To which I say, the government only works for you if you know how it works in general. Ben Carson, Donald Trump, Carly Fiorina, these outsiders, they don't know how the government actually functions, so they think they can just waltz in and things are going to change. No revolution is going to change the way the government is designed to function. 3 branches of government, which includes a bicameral Congress in which the Senate thinks it's better than the House, that's what the framers designed for us. This is how the federal government actually works. This isn't meant to discourage, but to open all eyes to how the political process is. Now, Bernie Sanders can talk all day about a revolution against the 1%. But if he or Hillary Clinton or anyone is not out there talking about where the actual fight should be in the states against a corrupt gerrymandering process, then they're going to be in for a lot of trouble come January 20th, 2017. We should be focused on the bigger picture, on the functionality of the government, and how it can better serve us, or all we're basically doing is talking and not changing. You can stay with me all election season by subscribing to this channel, where you can catch old episodes of the show and the new daily debate. Like the show's Facebook page, facebook.com/The Weekend Readout, and follow me on Twitter at Drexel Hurd and at The Weekend Readout. We're back with more of what you missed in politics next weekend. I'll see you then.